Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. Today I'll be making another really tasty Vietnamese recipe. So on the menu today is my Vietnamese cashew, coconut, and red cabbage coleslaw. This crunchy red cabbage coleslaw salad is absolutely delicious because it has a complex burst of flavor which are derived from all the ingredients that you put into this salad, and also by the Vietnamese style salad dressing I'll be showing you how to make. Next, I will show you two different variations on the salad and their macros so that you can decide which level of carbs you can tolerate and feel comfortable with according to your personal dietary needs. This is the macronutrient chart for the full Vietnamese cashew coconut red cabbage coleslaw with everything in it. Has a 2-to-1 ratio with 7.7 grams of total carbs, 2.5 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in 5.2 grams of net carbs per serving. Now the second version, this one does not have the cashews, but it also has a 2-to-1 ratio. Has 6.3 grams of total carbs, 2.3 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in only 4 grams of net carbs per quite generous serving. As you can see on this table, I have shown all the ingredients I'll be using. And all these ingredients are simple, easy to find, fresh and raw. And nothing's processed. Except for the monk fruit sweetener, of course. Before putting my keto coleslaw together, I begin by doing my prep steps, beginning by pan frying the raw coconut flakes. You do this by adding coconut oil to a skillet, which you have set over medium-low heat. And when your coconut oil has melted, add the raw coconut flakes to the pan. In order not to overly brown your coconut flakes, toss them gently as they're cooking for about 3 to 4 minutes, or until the coconut flakes are very lightly toasted and you can start to smell that amazing fragrance. It's really important that you cook your coconut flakes over low heat, otherwise they will burn very quickly. Now that that's done, use a slotted spoon to scoop out the toasted coconut flakes and place them into a cool dish, which will stop the cooking process, and then set this plate aside while you do the next prep step, which is roasting the cashews. Now, I'd like to mention that using the cashews is optional. The Vietnamese version does include them, but as I mentioned earlier, you can omit them to reduce your total carbs for this salad. If you want the cashews, all you have to do is to toss them into the same skillet you used for the coconut flakes. This skillet will still have some of the remaining coconut oil. You don't need to add any more. Now cook the raw cashews, tossing them frequently as you did the coconut flakes. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes until the cashews are starting to get a light golden color, and again you can smell them. So as soon as you smell them, take them off the element. They're done. Please note that you still want your cashews to be quite pale when they're all done for toasting both of these two ingredients, so don't be in a hurry when cooking these two ingredients because low and slow will get you the correct result. When your cashews are done, remove them from the skillet and place on the plate to cool alongside the coconut flakes. And then just set everything aside for a moment until they're needed later. Okay, now it's time to make the salad dressing. To a small mixing bowl or a large measuring cup as I'm using, add the lime juice. If you get a little bit of pulp, that's really good because that will give it another burst of flavor. Just make sure you remove any seeds. Add the oil, the lemon zest, the sweetener. Next I add the tamari, which is a sugar-free and gluten-free soy sauce, or if you prefer, you can use coconut aminos. Then add the salt and pepper, and of course the finely chopped jalapeno pieces. Please note that these pieces are very small. You don't want a big burst of flavor. Then give everything a quick stir, and the last thing you'll do is add your apple cider vinegar with mother. If you don't have the apple cider vinegar, you could use any other vinegar you like as long as it's a light tasting vinegar. But I have to admit, I really do like the apple cider vinegar because in my opinion, the apple cider vinegar does add a little bit of extra flavor to this Vietnamese style salad dressing. As you can see, this will make about 200 mils or about 2 cups of salad dressing. The next thing to do is to prep the salad ingredients. I'll first begin by slicing up the red cabbage. Because this is a large head, I first cut it in half, and then make a triangular cut to remove the white central core. This core is very, very tough, and it's best to remove it at this point. My red cabbage is really wide, so I'm cutting it into quarters because this quarter sized is much easier for me to handle and a bit safer too. In order to get the thinnest and most even ribbons of red cabbage, I like to use my mandolin. I'd like to caution everyone, however, when using your mandolin, please be very careful. This blade is deceptively sharp and it's so easy to get a serious cut. In the description below, I'll post a link to a safety glove you might want to get for your safety. In fact, I'm ordering one for each of my family members. Also, I'd like to mention that for everyday needs, you don't need an expensive mandolin, only if you're doing really fancy types of cutting. I bought mine in the dollar store and it was under $5 and it works perfectly well. When you have completed cutting all of the red cabbage that you want into these really beautiful, nice thin ribbons, take a handful of the red cabbage and squeeze to break up the tough outer skin. This squeezing process helps to make the red cabbage easier to chew and also releases some of the delicious sweet juices inside. The only drawback is that it also releases the purple color, which by the way does stain your hands. So it might be a good idea to use gloves at this point. I ran out of gloves, so time to order some more. I know that some people like to eyeball quantities, but I think it's really important to weigh out how much you're going to be using because it's very deceptive how much you can squeeze into a cup. And the quantity will affect your overall macros. After weighing it, toss everything into your salad bowl and repeat until you have the correct quantity you're making. The reason I weigh everything is because that is more precise and everyone fills cups or spoonfuls differently. And this way I can be more assured that my macros are correct. Now I'll show you how to do the cilantro. Hold the stems and then firmly press down with a knife blade as you scrape up and away from the stems. And then check to see if there are any long stems, and if there are, just get rid of any of the long stems. Then roll the cilantro into a tube shape like this. And beginning at one end, cut into very thin ribbons. The culinary term for this process is called chiffonade. Then also give the cilantro a rough chop, and then toss all of the cilantro into the bowl. The next ingredient is mint leaves. Because my mint leaves are quite large, I have chosen the smaller, more tender mint leaves from the stalk. And I'm going to chiffonade and chop the mint leaves as I did the cilantro. Then toss the mint leaves into the salad bowl and just using your fingers gently toss everything to combine. Now, the next ingredient is jicama. If you follow my channel, you'll know that I've already done several recipes with jicama. My keto French fries and my Thai green salad. And the links for these recipes will be provided in the description below. For those of you who are not familiar with jicama, let me give you some pointers. First, when buying jicama, don't buy a really large one. The ideal one will be about the size of a flattened large grapefruit. But do check it over. The jicama should not have any bruisings or scar marks, and the skin should be thin and even colored, and the texture should be nice and firm. I've also written a short article about jicama, nutrition and history, and I'll post the link to my article in the description below. That's if you want more information. When using jicama, it's very important to cut off all the skin and cut past the membrane layer because the skin is not edible. Depending on the size of your jicama, cut it in half, and from that point cut thin, even wedges. And when you've cut all your wedges, and then take one of the wedges and cut it into thin, even matchsticks. If you notice that your matchsticks are too long, just cut the longer ones in half. If you've not had jicama before, you absolutely should give it a try in this recipe. You'll find that the addition of the jicama matchsticks in this coleslaw gives it a really nice crunch and has a fresh but very mild apple taste that perfectly complements the red cabbage. Also, you might be interested to know that jicama is almost 50% fiber. And a lot of people think fiber is very good for you, especially on a keto diet. When you've cut up all your jicama matchsticks, put them into the salad bowl and toss to combine. Then get your salad dressing and stir it well before pouring the salad dressing on top of the coleslaw. And toss to coat everything really well. Now it's time for the coconut and the cashews. So reserve about a quarter of both your coconut and your cashews because you'll use those for garnishing. Sprinkle the remaining toasted coconut flakes on top of the coleslaw. And here's the option. If you're going to use the cashews, give them a rough chop and toss them into your salad bowl with the rest of the ingredients. And then toss everything for a minute or so until everything is well combined. Before refrigerating, have a wee taste to make sure that you have enough salt and vinegar in the salad. If you don't, adjust to your taste. But I'm happy with the way that this tastes, so I don't need to add anything more. Now I'm going to cover the bowl with cling wrap and refrigerate for a minimum of 2 to 4 hours. You need this time for all the ingredients to really develop and the flavors to come out. But if you have time and you want to develop the full taste, it's best if you can leave the coleslaw in your refrigerator overnight to marinate. If you're just cooking for 1 or 2 people and you think this is too much coleslaw, here's the good news. This coleslaw keeps extremely well for about 5 days in your refrigerator. Just make sure that you cover your bowl with cling wrap very well to create an airtight barrier. And even on the 5th day, the coleslaw still had a wonderful fresh taste. And I think this Vietnamese cashew coconut cabbage coleslaw is really versatile. It goes perfectly with many different kinds of entrees. I hope you'll give it a try, and most of all, I hope you enjoy this salad. To everyone, thank you very much for watching my video. Please leave me a comment with your thoughts, and if you have a recipe that you would like to recommend I try for this channel, I'd greatly appreciate that. Forward the link to a friend or family member, and if you're new to my channel, I would be honored if you would become a new subscriber. The link for the printable recipe in my blog, which by the way has a translate option so you can have the entire recipe translated to the language of your choice, is available in the description below. Take care of yourself, and I hope to see you when I post my next video.